Before the start of the 2023 NFL Draft, this prospect was projected to go undrafted and was barely ranked inside the top 500 prospects according to NFL Mock Database. There was pretty much no chance he was going to get drafted, and with the quarterback position being so limited, I just never thought Sean Clifford would hear his name called. Not only did he hear his name called, but he went in the 5th round to the Green Bay Packers, and right now, some are saying he has a chance to make an impact for the team, and there was even crazy rumors about him starting a couple weeks ago. In today's video, I want to introduce you to who Sean Clifford is. We're going to talk about his crazy Penn State career, we're going to talk about his crazy rise as a recruit, his historic Penn State career, and if the rumors are true that he has a chance of making it in the NFL. Honestly, I was a little bit skeptical when I started making this video because I've seen Sean Clifford play for a long time, but I think this will be an interesting video, and at minimum, he has a great story. But before we get started, quickly be sure to leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new and love college football content, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I could cover next. Now, let's get started and talk about Sean Clifford. Going back in time, his dad John played offensive line at Dayton and passed on his love for football for his son Sean. The day that Sean knew he fell in love with football was when he was in 5th grade at the Steve Clarkson Passing Academy. This took place at the Rose Bowl, and ironically, he would end his career at the Rose Bowl. He said, quote, "It's definitely surreal. That was one of the first camps I did as a quarterback, and I fell in love with the position, and I fell in love with the game." Going back in time though, he was apparently always a leader, as going back to basketball in 2nd grade, whenever his team would fall apart, he would gather all his undersized teammates together and focus on the comeback at hand. In middle school, Clifford became super serious about football and became good friends with another player by the name of KJ Hamler. The first sparks of this dream duo were kindled in middle school, and that's when Clifford and Hamler first met at a Midwest quarterback receivers camp. They were in 7th grade, and the two would eventually forge a bond as Hamler and Clifford moved into high school, and their talents moved onto the radar of national recruiting analysts. But where would Sean go to high school? When it came down to it, he had a vision. He didn't just want to play for St. Xavier High School, he wanted to be the starting quarterback in front of 15,000 fans. This school was in Cincinnati, and as a freshman, he became the backup there before he'd have a rude awakening in his first career start. They'd play against a national power in East St. Louis, and at the time, he was only a 16-year-old sophomore, starting for a program that had won 3 straight regional titles and a pair of state championships in the last decade. His confidence never wavered, and it was a role he had been prepared for since middle school. He did well as he finished the season with 832 yards and 9 touchdowns, plus 300 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. By that time, he was starting to become a big-time recruit, and in 2015, he was already ready to make his decision, nearly 2 years early. He chose Penn State over Cincinnati, West Virginia, Boston College, Mizzou, Louisville, and Pittsburgh, and this was a big early get for them. He was the first player in the class of 2017 for the Nittany Lions and began to try to get more recruits on board. But bigger offers were potentially on the way. He didn't seem to care, as he decided on Penn State before Ohio State and Michigan could get deep into recruiting him. He just had a different viewpoint than many other quarterback recruits. He was prepared to drive 6 hours to meet with offensive coordinator Joe Moorhead every week and to learn the system. Keep in mind, this was still 2 years before he'd even arrived. Despite multiple coaches leaving Penn State throughout the rest of his career, his commitment never wavered, and he always stayed on board with Penn State. What did the scouts have to say? One said, quote, "Clifford has a very smooth delivery and release that leads to great accuracy and velocity. He has very good athletic ability and will beat defenders at his feet when given the chance. He has a strong base and footwork in the pocket when passing." All in all, it seemed like he was pretty good. As a senior, he would be hurt for part of the year, but still managed to finish with 1,426 yards and 9 touchdowns, with 560 rushing yards and 12 touchdowns on the ground. While Christian Hackenberg was the quarterback that would help hold Penn State together, Clifford saw himself as the guy who could truly bring them back both on and off the field. Turns out to be Trace McSorley first, but he said, quote, "For me, it's more fuel to my fire. I feel I get pressured or stressed about it. St. X really taught me that there's bigger things in life than just yourself, and helping others and being a man is a lot more important than winning football games." He definitely left a legacy at St. Xavier as he finished his career ranked 4th in school history with 4,004 passing yards and broke the school record for rushing yards for a quarterback with 1,110 and 20 scores. According to 24/7 Sports, Clifford was a 4-star recruit, the number 8 pro-style quarterback, and the 196th best player in the class of 2017. So, how did he end up doing in Happy Valley? Well, let's take a look. Clifford would end up redshirting early on at Penn State, and then in 2018 would appear in 4 total games, finishing with 2 touchdowns. As going into 2019, Tommy Stevens would transfer to Mississippi State, and he'd ironically compete with Will Levis for the starting job. Apparently he won pretty quickly, and went on to have a pretty good 2019 season. He scored 6 touchdowns in his first 2 games against Idaho and Buffalo, helped them destroy Pitt, Maryland, and Purdue, and then had another crazy 3-game stretch. He helped them knock off number 17 Iowa, had 4 touchdowns and a win over number 16 Michigan, and then had 4 touchdowns and a win on the road against Michigan State. This put Penn State near the top of the country, and in early November, they looked like a playoff team. Unfortunately, they ran into another undefeated team in Minnesota, and after a late interception, the Golden Gophers won 31-26, and in that game, Clifford struggled as he had 3 interceptions. That was their first loss of the year, and then they beat Indiana before they would lose to number 2 Ohio State. That'd be his final regular season game before he'd then help them beat number 17 Memphis in the Cotton Bowl. In total, he finished with 2,654 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. He had a great first year as a starter, but there still were some flaws. 2020 would be difficult for him, as in his first game, he would have 4 touchdowns against Indiana, but they ended up folding at the end, and Michael Penix had an insane 2-point conversion, which gave them a loss. After that, despite 3 touchdowns, they lost to Ohio State, then got beat by Maryland, then lost to Nebraska, and then lost to Iowa. The team was 0-5 at this point, and it was an absolute disaster of a start. Luckily though, he'd helped them win their next 5 games over Michigan, Rutgers, Michigan State, and Illinois. He didn't play particularly well in any game, and apparently even got death threats from fans. Absolute craziness, but the world was also pretty crazy in 2020 at the time, and also, Will Levis apparently got a start in there as well. In total, Clifford finished with 1,883 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 9 picks. That was by far his worst year, but 2021 was going to be a fresh start. With fans once again in the stands, he had a pretty great start to his season. He helped them knock off number 12 Wisconsin in week 1, scored 2 touchdowns in their whiteout victory over number 22 Auburn, had 4 touchdowns against Villanova, and then 3 touchdowns against Indiana. They're now off to a 5-0 start, but seemingly like every year, Clifford hit a wall. He got hurt early in the game against Iowa, and Taquan Roberson struggled mightily, and they lost to the number 3 Hawkeyes, then lost in 9 overtimes to Illinois, and then just couldn't get it done on the road against Ohio State. They went from 5-0 to 5-3. He'd bounce back with 3 touchdowns against Maryland, before another uninspired performance against number 6 Michigan, in which they lose 21-17. His final regular season game would come against Michigan State, as he threw 3 touchdowns in the snow, and they lost to number 12 Sparty. He'd play in their bowl game against number 21 Arkansas, where he threw 2 interceptions, and they lost 24-10 to the Hogs. He finished with 3,107 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 8 picks. Some believed he'd be calling it a career, but nope, he got another chance to play, and whether you loved it or hated it, Clifford was back for the 2022 season. He's going to turn 24 less than a month before the start of 2022 camp, but he said the reason for his return was a chance to play with his little brother, Liam, who was a wide receiver on the team. Clifford was back for 2022, and despite not even looking that good, he managed to have a quiet 5 touchdowns and a week 1 victory against Purdue, including a game-winning pass to freshman running back Nick Singleton. From there, he helped them beat Ohio and Auburn, and then had 4 touchdowns against Central Michigan. After struggling against Northwestern, fans were starting to beg for Drew Allar to play. That would not end up happening, and after a 41-17 loss to Michigan, those fans' voices got even louder. He would end up quieting them though, as he threw 4 touchdowns and a win over Minnesota, but then went back to his Sean Clifford ways, throwing 3 interceptions against number 2 Ohio State, in a game they had a chance to actually win. From there, he'd close out the rest of his career with 5 straight wins. They would destroy Indiana, Maryland, Rutgers, and Michigan State, and then got to a bowl game, and then got to the Rose Bowl, where he started out his career, where he started out his love for football as a young kid, and against number 8 Utah, threw for 279 yards and 2 touchdowns. In total, he finished with nearly 3,000 passing yards, 24 touchdowns, and 7 picks. That was the end of Sean Clifford's career. On the field, he won nearly 70% of his starts as a Nittany Lion, and became the program's all-time leader in passing yards and touchdowns. He said, quote, "I have so many blessings." He finished as Penn State's all-time leader in wins for a starting quarterback, completion percentage, completions, passing yards, total yards, passing touchdowns, and passing attempts. Granted, I'm not sure how many of those records he'd hold if he didn't get an extra year at it, but he also finished 4th in Big Ten history in career touchdown passes, 5th in passing yardage, and 7th in completions and attempts. To me, there needs to be an asterisk on this, because in any sort of normal world, he would not have gained that extra year. But I guess that's just how it goes, despite how annoying it might be to me and other fans. Going into the NFL, though, he didn't really serve a chance, but he actually ended up getting drafted. He was taken in the 5th round by the Green Bay Packers with the 149th overall pick, over quarterbacks such as Max Duggan, Tanner McKee, and Jaron Hall. This was kind of a shock to me and the rest of the world, but it looked like the Packers saw something in him. He was notably welcomed to Green Bay with a video gift from Aaron Rodgers, and honestly, it still shocked me he was drafted. Early in the summer, it was leaked that he played really well in practice, and that he was commanding the offense. This led some to believe that he could overtake Jordan Love as the starter, and this is where the rumors were starting to get out of hand. Keep in mind, he was playing against second-string players, and it was practice. But that never seems to stop the hype machine. I'm not a hater on Sean Clifford by any means, but he's just not going to start, and I'm still not sure he's going to make the roster. They have Danny Etling as a backup quarterback as well, and they recently signed USFL MVP Alex Mago. The Packers would not have signed a player like him if they were truly confident in Clifford, but it looks like it's going to be a three-man battle for those last two spots, and I think Etling is definitely going to get a chance, so it'll come down to Alex and Clifford. Ultimately, the Packers did spend a draft pick on him, so I think Clifford will make the roster as the third man, but we'll just have to wait and see. What do you guys think? If you're a Packers or a Penn State fan, what do you think of Sean Clifford? Who's another player I could cover next? And be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.